Just got to look at some cedar leaves. They were glowing pretty green, so I decided to grab some footage. I was also able to see some storms down to the south near the woodlands of Houston, and a pretty nice sunset off to the west. First quarter moon too, so we're going to start seeing the moon during the evening hours here. Pretty neat shot there. Anyway, it is a quiet evening across most of the country. Looking at Texas here, you can see the typical Bermuda high flow established over the state, and we've got that southeasterly flow coming up from the Gulf, and high pressure about where we would normally expect it this time of year, down over the Gulf in the southeastern U.S. Got a few thunderstorms out here in West Texas from about Midland up to Childress. They aren't really doing a whole lot there. They're just forming where the deeper moisture is reaching the higher terrain along the Caprock, and we're getting a few storms forming in that area. Now, we had a very inactive sea breeze, and it's always a really good idea to look at fair weather patterns and compare that to your storm days, because that's how you distinguish between non-precipitation events and storm days. So what did we have today? This is the Texas Gulf Coast. Houston is located right here, and Victoria is about right there, and Port Aransas is way down here at the bottom. So this is about 11 o'clock, and we can see a sea breeze coming on shore, and that's also broken up into some outflow bubbles. You see this here? That's from rain that happened over the past 30 minutes to an hour. You can see a couple little cold pools here also, and maybe another one in here. And if you followed this webcast, you know that these sea breeze storms tend to move northward during the day. They pass through Houston about early afternoon, and they make it up into the College Station, Huntsville, Lufkin area towards evening, and on a day like today, they dissipate pretty early. Yeah, on a very strong day, however, they'll push inland pretty quickly and persist until after dark. So let's see if I have a frame showing what they look like a little bit later. There we go. This is one storm around Katy and another down near Roseland. And I don't think we have the Suomi satellite. That hasn't come in quite a while. I don't know what's going on with that, but the latest we have there is the Aqua image. That's going to be that frame right there. So there's the pattern once again across Texas. You see the dew points in the upper 60s, and when you go south a little bit, low 70s. And here's a good example of some incorrect readings there at the Crockett site, 86. We know to cross that out. And if you do numerical analysis with some of the tools out there, they may key in on this, and you may get some bullseye type patterns. Just something to watch out for. Here's what we have for hurricanes. We've got the remnants of Newton coming on into the Arizona area near Tucson. That's moved northward during the past day or so. And Hermine is gone. Well, the remnants are off the Long Island coast, but as far as a strong circulation, those days are over. Here's the remnants of Newton. This is kind of a cool image, and you can see how the dry air destroys the circulation in the system because there's not much in the way of high clouds here. What we're seeing is mostly a lot of low clouds. See these darker patchy colors? The colder tops are where you have the lighter colored shades. And all we see is a little bit of a pattern like this, not very extensive at all, nothing like a spiral. So this is moving inland and just kind of turning into a big rain event in the Four Corners area. And here's a quick look at the radar. Maybe I can animate this real quick. And you will be able to see a little bit of the circulation here. This is the Tucson WSR88D. And you can see these fragments out here near Casa Grande. They're moving towards the southeast. And out here near Safford and Globe, they're moving to the north and northeast. So you can kind of tell that there's probably a broad circulation just north of Tucson out in this area here. So radar is a good way to track these circulations once these storms are pretty far inland. So what's going on with our forecast? Let's look at the GFS, and I'm going to give you a little bit different perspective here. This is the Atlantic sector. So what we're looking at here is North America here on the left, and then we have Cuba, and then these islands here, and I did look those up. Those are called the Lesser Antilles. The entire island chain, all the way from Venezuela to Puerto Rico and up to Cuba, this whole thing is called the Antilles. The part near Cuba and Puerto Rico, that's the Greater Antilles. Then we have the Lesser Antilles in this area that I'm shading. So there we go. Now we know what that is. And then as far as windward islands, that's going to be this chain right here, contrasted with the leeward islands, which are close to the coast of Venezuela. So now we got a little bit of a geography refresher there, and we can make a little more sense when we're talking about this tropical weather. So what do we have going on here? Let's look at the 0 hour frame. The purple shades are going to be your precipitable water. Again, that's going to be the sum of the water vapor from the surface up to the stratosphere. So the richer plumes of high moisture content are, here's one example right there, just off the coast of Gambia and Senegal. There's a couple other little patches moving through here. This is an easterly wave, and another easterly wave coming into the Caribbean right there. So this is the one we're going to be watching for Texas early next week. However, it's starting to look like that may mash up against a frontal boundary coming down to the I-10 area and the coast. So that may not make it all the way up into Texas proper. Let's take a closer look at this, and instead of just looking at model data, we should really look at observed data. And so I've brought up the polar orbiter images. Now we need to think back on climatology. Where do we expect patterns in September? Well, let's trace out the equator. I know from my knowledge of geography, the equator intersects the mouth of the Amazon, sort of in this area here, way off to the left side. So this is going to be the equator right there. And this time of year, we find the intertropical convergence zone a little bit north of there. That's going to run roughly like this across the Atlantic, and then it intersects with the north coast of Venezuela off the left edge. So things are about where we expect it this time of year. So here's all the clouds and showers associated with the intertropical convergence zone, kind of a broad area, about 500, 600 miles wide, broken up into little segments of easterly waves. And in between, there's a few clear areas in between those easterly wave troughs. I guess you could call these easterly wave ridges. There's another one in between right there. And let's take a closer look at the satellite. I'm going to zoom way in because I think it's really good to be kind of intimate with the data and kind of like put yourself in these situations. Let's go down, just drop down to Africa and kind of get a feel for what conditions are like. This is going to be about midday, so we're looking at about 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And we can see that if we were just standing on the ground at some village here, we would see a lot of scattered to broken, very tall cumulus clouds in all directions. They'd probably be concentrated on some of the hilltops and mountain ridges, of course. But yeah, there's a lot of those little towers, cumulus towers, growing everywhere. And so that's kind of what we see across Western Africa this time of year in the intertropical convergence zone. And a lot of times those systems will form up into lines and MCSs and squall lines, and you will end up with a organized system like this, can see these higher towers, very organized area of thunderstorms, and that will start having an impact on the mesoscale charts, and those are kind of symbiotic with easterly waves. The more these develop, the more the easterly waves deepen. And of course, when those move into the Atlantic and into the Caribbean, that's the nucleus you get for hurricanes and tropical storms. And occasionally, when these are up in the Sahel and they scrape some of the sandier regions, we'll end up with dust storms. And some of that dust occasionally will make it all the way into the United States. I was seeing a little bit of that a few days ago, but right now I don't really see any dust over the Atlantic. There's this right here, but this is a sun glint from the satellite, reflecting off the waves there in the Atlantic. So there's a little refresher about West African weather. That's what we're looking at when we trace the origin of these hurricanes and tropical storms out to the east. And we find ourselves on the West African coast in this area. And we can kind of track the air masses and kind of see what's involved. Now, we can use surface analysis to a certain extent, but you can see one big problem we have here is a loss of data. Not all of these stations are reporting. A lot of times that's due to budgetary issues. It can be due to civil war, telecommunications problems, that kind of thing. So we have a data void right there, for example. But where we do have data, you can see that the clouds are, for the most part, broken, and dew points are in the upper 70s. So very humid air. Got some low 70s in this area. So definitely very tropical there. All right, let's see. Let's go back to the maps here, and we'll run the forecast forward here and see what's going on. So starting out in the Caribbean right here, around Jamaica and in the Caribbean, got this one easterly wave moving through. In fact, maybe I should move the map over so you can see that better. So this is going to be moving towards Texas. It's already Wednesday here, so Thursday, Friday, we're getting that big plume of moisture into the Gulf. It's in the Gulf proper over the weekend. But then we see this next system coming down from Canada. This is Sunday. So that's bringing a lot of drier, cooler air into the northeastern U.S. See that coming out onto the East Coast. And some of that does make it all the way through Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. So that moisture doesn't quite make it very far north. Maybe to the coastal regions. And then we have another easterly wave coming together in the middle Atlantic, and the model is going for maybe a tropical storm coming together southeast of Bermuda. And when it's moving northward at this latitude, usually we're looking for a recurvature. So the odds that makes it to the Gulf of Mexico are very slim. Another system here on the way. This is 192 hours out on September 15th. Is that going to make it into the Caribbean? Well, right now it doesn't look like that. See, there's more recurvature there, so things are looking a little bit on the quiet side there in the Caribbean, but we are getting towards the peak of tropical weather season, so we're going to keep an eye on this region here as far as systems that will affect Texas, maybe later in the month. Okay, so we are going to break down a few fronts here around mid-month. See, there's one right there on September 11th. Another low-pressure system comes through the Midwest on the 13th. Get another front dropping down into the Ohio Valley, Mississippi River Valley. So the patterns are starting to get a little bit more active across the central and Midwest states. And really, that's about all I have here. So not a whole lot going on right now, but it looks like we will start to get some storms here in the Midwest over the next day or so. Definitely overnight, looks like an MCS coming into Illinois, And then for tomorrow, you can see that kind of sinks into the Ohio River Valley. Let's take a look at the radar real quick. As a matter of fact, let's see if we've got those storms going, because I noticed I did kind of skip over the activity there up in the northeast U.S. Maybe I'll bring up the Springfield, Illinois radar site. There we go. Yeah, there's a little MCS moving through the Quincy area, almost up to the Quad Cities. So that looks like it is moving probably to the east there. So a little bit of a wet pattern there in central Illinois and out to Indiana over the next day. All right, guys, I think I covered about everything I want to cover for tonight. Let's see, checking the chat here. I think we're looking good as far as audio, and I think now that I've got the chat system set up really good on my right-hand menu and things are running smoothly, I may start taking a few chat requests here, and if you have questions like tomorrow night, definitely throw them up, and I'll see if I can pull up some products and we can talk about that. Anyway, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you tomorrow at the usual time. Bye-bye.